Now, something we didn't touch on yet, Zach, but we almost got there when we were talking about lipid peroxidation, is if you heat um, polyunsaturated fatty acid containing oils to high temperatures, you damage the fatty acids. And these damaged fatty acids are not not well, they're unhealthy. They're not good for our health. And I'm not sure of the legislation in the US, but here in the UK and in continental Europe, there's a limit to the number of times restaurants can reuse cooking oils, for example, um, because high fat frying repeatedly with the same oil, that's bad. But a high oleic oil, I think, is going to be more resistant to the damage of heating to high temperature. Now, I'm presenting that as if it's a good thing to try to encourage deep fat frying, which, which,
Mhm.
which I'm not. But I'm just saying this would be an impact. Um, so, those high oleic oils are probably quite valued by the users of high amounts of vegetable oils. Um,
Mhm.
so that would be one strategy to limit linoleic acid, and I think maybe it's already happening. So it will be interesting to know what the US data on linoleic acid consumption is when um, high oleic oil use really kicks in. Maybe linoleic acid consumption is going to go down.
Mhm.
You make another
Yeah.
point, which is, I mean, we're talking about replacement, um, but there are other considerations. So palm oil has been widely used in the food industry. Um, that's a saturated fatty acid containing vegetable oil or plant oil. But plantations of palm for palm oil is environmentally devastating in Southeast Asia. So you have to think, and whether the general consumer thinks about this or not, I'm not sure. But the industry and the scientists and the regulators have to think about impacts other than just human health. We have to think of a one planet, one health sort of strategy. um, and again, this is about balances, isn't it? Getting
Mhm.
everything. So we want planetary health, we want human health. So where can we be to get both of those things? um, so something that seems like, oh, okay, I want to reduce my linoleic acid. Let's use palm oil. Um, I personally, I don't think that is a good strategy from a nutritional point of view, but from an environmental point of view, that not may not be ideal.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot to consider, especially when you step outside just the pure health implications of this
Yeah,
stuff,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
yeah. I
Well,
wanted to ask you.
soybean production, you know, which produces soybean oil, but the production is way beyond the oil.
Mhm.
That is environmentally harmful in some geographies. But there's no stopping that now. So I think um, our food use, either for feeding animals and for feeding humans, has effects beyond simply food production and human health. Has lots of other effects.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to follow up with you on just the reheating of these oils in general
Mm,
too, because it seems like there's what is it about like the multiple reheating? Because if I just get like that same oil and go home and cook with it once with a small amount essentially, why is that less detrimental than if it's in a vat and it's getting repeated like
Yeah.
that?
So I think some of it is the temperature. So I think you would never use at home. You would never get to the temperature for prolonged periods of time that is used in a fast food restaurant, for example. So that's one thing. Secondly, every time you do that, you damage the fatty acids, right? But obviously, well, I say obviously, you don't damage all of them the first time you do it. So you have an oil where you have some damaged fatty acids, okay? Then you reheat it again and you damage more. So you're just progressively damaging more and more of the fatty acids in the oil. And by damaging, I mean, causing oxidation, causing the double bonds to switch around. So now you have trans fatty acids, which are really bad
Mm,
for us. All of the fatty acids I've mentioned so far are uh, cis fatty acids, but this heating produces trans fatty acids. So you've got trans fatty acids, you've got oxidized fatty acids. These are both harmful. So repeated heating just increases the amount of those fatty acids in the oil.
okay.
And you don't
And
do
just
that at home. You use oil once at home, and you
mm,
don't. I mean, you don't do it. I guess you don't do it in a deep fat fryer.
right.
You have a little, you have a millimeter of oil in your pan, and you heat it for a very short period of time. Okay, it gets a bit hot, but I think it's probably not the temperature that's used in fast food restaurants.
Yeah, that makes sense. I did wanna ask just kind of like a secondary question with that because sometimes I'll see, like I mean, the argument against, like, the arguments against eating deep fried food, I think, is, like, fairly strong just in general for things we've talked about, and, you're not gonna get a lot of disagreement when people from health conscious people about, like, yeah, maybe don't make a habit of eating deep fried food on a
Mm,
regular basis. I think
mm,
in general, that's a pretty good heuristic. Then we come to a scenario where, like, I go to the grocery store and I grab, like, a canister of canola oil off the shelf, and the argument I hear against that is, like, well, the process to get that oil is such that those oils have become I mean, the word they always use is rancid, or it's like the heating process to extract the oil is such that we're getting that negativity just from even a bottle of canola oil on the shelf at the store, even though it hasn't been stuck in a deep fryer or put in my frying pan yet. Is that
yeah.
something that we should be concerned with, or is that just kind of speculation that isn't
Um, I
necessarily
don't. If I'm honest with you, I don't think that is a major concern. I mean, I don't really. I mean, I'm not an expert on the level of peroxidation of vegetable oils off the shelf, but I don't hear that as a big concern.